Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for caring about election integrity. And this is jointly sponsored between Trust Vote, Sunrise Center, and Enlightened Films. So for those of you who want to send a question, please go to
Facebook.
Is that what bothered me is that the election integrity legislation won't even be able to be discussed in the Senate. So let's stay with that for now,
Yeah.
okay? Thank you. All right, so I guess we're on to...
You want to stand or you want to...
Bill?
Good. Very good.
Yeah, hi. My name's Bill Risner, and I'm a lawyer in Tucson, Arizona. I mostly, throughout my practice, I'm a trial lawyer. I've got one partner. We do personal injury kind of work. But I first became a lawyer in 1968. And it was during the Vietnam War of '68. You may recall we just had the 50th anniversary, all the stuff that happened in that year. And after law school, I went to graduate business school on campus, and I ended up, representing every anti-war thing where things came up. Represented. With the women's movement played a critical role in our area, all kinds of things, and have always been very involved in political activity. In 1970, actually, the Republicans redistricted the city of Tucson, the mayor and council, on behalf of the Democratic Party in 1970. I filed a lawsuit and turned back the redistricting effort, the gerrymandering of that. And that was, in the old days when you could do that sort of stuff. I've been involved in, I was sort of as a sideline kind of the political lawyer in Pima County. In private practice. I was hired by our board of supervisors that ran the elections one time, or a couple times for election advice, our county recorder who's involved in those sort of things. In probably 2000, I was, when George Bush stole the election in Florida, I was kind of interested to see if elections were honest in my county. So I had myself appointed as an observer. And it was fun going through the process because you see how things work at the precinct level. And these are good people that volunteer, that help out. You see how the ballots were transferred in and who checked to see if the signature. I was very satisfied to that. Then I got down and I saw a computer with little lights on, and said, "Whoop! Those are the results, and that's who win." And that was kind of the end of the line for me because I don't know computers. That was the whole thing. Then we got in our county an election integrity group, and with a very unusual group of people that knew elections, a PhD guy from computers, retired, that wanted to be involved, an ex-NSA guy that was a master programmer that knew computers, John Brakey involved, who's an extremely bright bulldog. When he bites on, he just keeps looking. Jim March, who was on the board for Black Box Voting. And we started a program of saying, okay, what do we need to do to get things certified in Pima County, change the way the computer's set up, the protections for the system, and what have they been doing in my county in the past. So we'd like the database of past election stuff. we were the Democratic Party, and our Board of Supervisors was run by 3 Democrats. They wouldn't let us look at a thing. We got I got a resolution from the Democratic Party at the organizing convention, unanimous, asking the Board of Supervisors to cooperate with us so that we could find out what they've been doing. Made a public record request. We said, please don't make us sue you. We had to sue them. They probably spent $1 million defending our getting what they were doing. And then, of course, we couldn't figure out why they're doing this. What are they hiding? Then eventually we find out that there was a $2 billion bond election that they had rigged, and they didn't want to get that information to us. Ultimately, actually, for years, I litigated concerning that bond election, and it's one thing. What's on the board there? Just cut right to that problem.
Right there.
This was something that our county board of supervisors that run the election filed in the Supreme Court in Arizona to prevent them from looking at this case. And they say in there the only question is whether there's a cause of action based upon the historically committed act. They put in writing a couple times that they had cheated in that bond election, and there was absolutely nothing that we could do about that. The newspapers would never print that. It's not covered and that sort of things. So what I want to just is to cover a few points and to set the focus on the large situation. And the focus is that we are, in this country, facing major problems that need to be dealt with and resolved now. The problems of climate emergency, you can go down your list, food stuff, but we need to deal with these problems in this country, and the only tool we have is democracy. The only tool is voting. The only tool is accurately counting. And that is the fundamental problem that we must deal with, because our system is rigged otherwise. The rulers of America are opposed to democracy. The basis of our country, the property interests and the slavers, when they put it in the Constitution so it would work slow, they built that into it. The different houses, they built that into it. The judges are opposed to democracy. I can't tell you how many times I've been in court and talked about some fundamental right, and their eyes glaze over.
Wow.
Come in and talk to them about why we need this contract thing between this corporate. Boy, they're interested in that, because that's something they can deal with. But the judges, not only is the system opposed to it, but they live in a autocratic system where the U.S. Supreme Court can say that companies are people, that speech, money is speech, things that are ridiculous that every judge down the line is supposed to do. That's the world that they live in. The computerized computers and the computerized elections were built to cheat. That's it. They were built to cheat. They had known problems within them because they need to cheat so that the people's wishes aren't followed with the elections. And I've learned over the years that they're all in on it. And by that I mean I've talked to, because I was representing let's say the election lawyer for the Democratic Party in Pima County, which is Tucson. It's a big deal in Arizona. I talked to our state Democratic leaders. They don't want to listen. They don't care. It is phenomenal to what extent people in that system, they say, well, if you bring up this thing, then people won't vote. they'll lose confidence in the system, blah, blah, all of those reasons. So they're in on it from the top, and we have to, we have to cut through that. Let me tell you, I put on the board where our people put in writing that they cheated in a $2 billion election. Not one word in our local press, not anything can be done. We had testimony under oath by election workers of felonies repeatedly done by our election department. You could absolutely do nothing, and it's not it's not just us. You look in Florida at Tim Canova when he was had that race against Wasserman Schultz. He sued the county election director to, because under Florida law, public records law, they could see the ballots. Got a specific order suing her to see the ballots. She destroyed the ballots. Nothing happened. We had a Republican race in Maricopa County. Incredible race. If I could cut to the chase on this, this was a Republican primary. One guy wins by 4 votes. Okay, one guy, the more conservative guy, actually, the first count wins by 4 votes. Then they are gonna, can't, because it's so close. In Arizona, you can't get a recount. Not permitted under law. You can get an automatic recount if it's 1/10 of 1%. So they got one. They wanted to do a hand count. The Secretary of State sent a memo over. Absolutely not. You're prohibited from doing a hand count. You can't do that. You got to use a machine. They use a machine. The other guy wins by 14 votes. That's no big deal, except 20,000 ballots. When they counted them the second time, they counted 486 more votes. And then the election director comes to court and says, 18% error rate is within the expected range, no problem. The county attorney cooperates with the election company to hide out their person who had been subpoenaed from coming to court. So the judge says, "Oh, what can we do? Sorry, you lose, the next guy wins." It's a Republican fight. So the Republicans, they're concerned about this. We want to see what happened with those ballots. So Jack Harper, a right-wing Republican chairman of the Senate in Arizona, says, "I'll help you," and he subpoenas the ballots. Before they were going to turn over the ballot, the FBI and the U.S. attorney went in and grabbed the ballots and hid them away. 2 years later, when the heat died down, they destroyed the ballots. Yeah. The point I'm getting at, and Fitrakis can tell you what happened in Ohio, getting orders saying that you're going to hold the ballots, examining, get them agreeing that they cheat, all of those things. Yeah. You can't do it after the election. The whole system locks up. You've got to do it beforehand. And that's the great thing that what Brakey's come up with and what you're going to hear about in terms of ballot images and countings, and all the focus has to be on, let's see what these guys are going to do, let's stop them, let's examine it, because the whole system is set up to cheat, and voting is what we own. It's the people's only tool to straighten these things out and to have democracy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's pretty tough to follow. You can see why he's my mentor. 15 years. I want you to know, in 15 years, he never said to me, John, that's a dumb idea. He never did. And I know I had some dumb ideas. But he did say, how about this, John? And that's the kind of group that we formed. And the same people I started with 15 years ago, I'm still with them. And a lot of these people, we never even had a really bad argument. Yeah, we disagreed on a few points or whatever, but it's pretty unique. And so anyway, I'm John Brakey, and I am an election scrutineer. I used to be an election gadfly. A gadfly comes around, and he bugs you, and he gets on you. But they don't take you serious until you become an election scrutineer, that you have lawyers. And it's awful and very important to be able to work with these people. And you know what I go out there and do? I teach the 7 C's. Character, capacity, credibility, civility. Hey, I can call you bad names real nicely if I use civility, right? Okay? Also, pride in my citizenship. Important, my country. That's who I'm working for. My grandchildren, what country they're going to inherit. But the most important C that I work with is courage. And it's very hard sometimes to go into a state like North Carolina all by yourself and refuse to leave until you build a coalition. And that's what we did in North Carolina. And I'll go into that later. But I do want to get into who we are, what we do. We've been around for 15 years. And so basically, as you can see in the slide, that's the same mission that we've had from the very beginning. You know, I'm not going to read all this stuff because I do have quite a few slides and I really want to kind of get through this thing. But I kind of want to know who we are and what we do and what we've learned. Because we've learned one thing: nothing is fixed until we know why it broke. We have approached this thing 15 years working on this. Our breakthrough has come in the last 3 years, and what can I go into it? What you're looking at the slide right now, and I got to put my glasses on to get some of my notes, is that from what Bill explained, we must have a publicly verified elections and an informed public are key to decorrupting our system. That's what we've discovered. We must stop election officials from hiding or destroying ballot images. Ballot images are public records and must be used to verify election publicly. As we know in the United States, as we enter another crucial election cycle, it's essential to remember that the policies which support our elections are critical to the strength of our fragile, very badly damaged, hackable democracy. And it's being hacked by all different places. I'm not going to stand up here and talk about Russians or Ukrainians. I know that most fraud in this country is done by insiders, if you look at it. And they have to have an insight to be able to get into it. So I don't care who you really are, or who it is. If it's a fat lady up in some Seattle area who just stole 100,000 records or 100, and much amount, it's a cat lady. Who cares? Okay? Nobody should be able to get into these systems or whatever. You know, when we look at the problem, you can see on this slide right here, that we really do have a very gigantic problem. You know, 195 million registered voters, 13,000 voter registrations, jurisdictions, I should say, 187,000 precincts. The only good thing I can tell you about all that is about maybe 75% of all of them are going to be digital. Now, what's this digital thing this Brakey guy keeps talking about, okay? The old system of voting on an optical scan machine was an LED light that came down off there, and it had to be a perfectly made ballot, and if it was a dark spot, it got absorbed. That was the decision. It purely, really was a black box, is what it really was. These new systems work differently, and of course, if you look at this slide, I think that means a lot. It's just, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. My God, they did, and they hit it. When these ballot images first came out, 8, 9 years ago, they used to call the scanner, let's say ES&S, who's the biggest company, their digital scanner was called a digital image scanner. Then all of a sudden, nobody wanted to buy that because people were saying, what have you done? You've created a record that we have to maintain. It's in the chain of custody. I'll explain more on that later. For our democracy to recover, and when I go into a state, first off, I go in and I do an investigation with my team. We investigate. For those, and we call it, what we put together is a track condition report. Okay, that report is very important. I know every county, I know every election official, I know what their equipment is, because when I go in there and start investigating, interviewing, I want to know, before I ask the questions, I already know the answers, I just want to size you up. I want to find out if you're real or not. What kind of bull are you pushing? Because that happens a lot. There's a lot of people who are taught that a good elections administrator is an administrator that hide all the warts. My God, if he's a father, what is he doing? Raising sociopaths? Those are the questions that in the back of my mind am I really wondering. And it's really, but I do want to say on the other hand, I meet some wonderful people in elections who really are there to do a good job. But sometimes the procedures and how elections work and how the game is played, that the biggest thing we fight is groupthink. So, getting back to it, to really understand what's going on, I have to teach other things, like, well, election fraud is what I'm here for, but you know, my God, what they're doing with the voter database, voter suppression, different techniques, and now also done by micro-targeting, psycho-targeting, voters using social media, by using social media to attack people, gerrymandering. Wow, I'm in North Carolina. He wrote the book on gerrymandering there. I thank God that this lady's offering her dad who died redemption for being a racist pig, for doing what he's done across this country, and it's big news. Common Cause got the files, and it could be a tipping point coming because they turned over, I guess, several different computers worth of data of how they rigged this country, and they have found the other documents mixed into it. So it's, you know, it's a hopeful frontier on the gerrymandering. It really is. You know, I've learned as I go along. I used to be a psychotherapist when I was very younger, and I'm into understanding how group things work, peer pressure. I've learned to unrig the system. My God, we need to first unrig ourselves. We really do, to take a look at what we know. The news we get today, tomorrow turns out to be falsehood or propaganda. We have to make an effort to really understand what's going on. And to understand, the first thing is that damn black box. You know, we've been fighting it for years. And you know, I'll say one thing about Steve over there. Thank you for the work that you've done and how you've enlightened me over the years in the study that he's been doing independently as a journalist going into this. But you know, machines are vulnerable to hacking, the problems with that, you use secret software. We know all of this, you know. I'm not going to sit up here because the time span is going to all of this, but I just want to touch base on it. Why is a black box called a black box? You know, I didn't really know that until I was doing this presentation. And I didn't realize that our brain is a black box. Boy, there's some black box brains out there. I don't want counting votes, do you? And so we need transparency really bad, okay? And but I do know that how the game is played and how the tricks are played, okay? Bill's touched into part of it. You know, I like to explain the story. Well, first off, this guy on the screen is Mickey Donahoe. Mickey Donahoe worked with NSA. He's a cryptologist, had a mind like a steel trap, could understand things and diagnose. And he said this in a court case in 2014 that was very stunning. A logic and accuracy test only tells you that someone has programmed a database so that it has the correct races and candidates on a particular day. Unfortunately, the computer is a black box, and that doesn't tell you anything about what happened minute to minute on election day. It is entirely possible for someone to program the database so it does one thing during the logic and accuracy test, like Volkswagen, I'll go into that in a little while, and differently during election day. It's possible to have a network connection to change the software and what it's doing on election day. So now I'm going to jump to what we found. I found that connection when I was in Wisconsin. Do you see the picture up there? That is a cellular motor built into the DS200. There's a number of states that have that. So what can they do? They can change numbers on the fly. Okay, where it was 10 years ago that they would have to pre-program the virus into the system. And of course, when they do this, you know, people think it's going on to the EMS. Well, it funnels to the EMS, but they know what they're doing. They have all the money in the world to be able to say, at this precinct, we can steal this much, and they can tailor it. I was part of the Fraction Magic team with Bev Harris, with Benny Smith, and the first thing I wanted to learn was how to de-rig, because I did Maricopa for 4 cycles. And we used to fight them. I had to sue them because they would not commit the election results by precinct before they did the audit. And when I learned Fraction Magic, the first thing I asked Benny to teach me was how to de-rig. Because after they pull the results, within a day, they'd say, here's the results. Because they unrigged 12 precincts. We don't post our poll tapes online in Arizona. Okay? You don't get them. So you totally have to believe what they say. But anyway, the thing that's really fascinating about this right here is that the FBI director said, hey, our voting system is never connected to the internet. What did we find? We found all of Florida has it. All the state of Rhode Island has it. Okay? There are other states. It's a standard product that comes in the machine. Now, some states say you can't have it, like North Carolina, so hopefully they withdraw it, but we never know if they really do because it's illegal to open the box up and take a look because it's not ours. And that's why what we're going to be winding up doing. But I just want to show you how it's so easy to defeat and to explain to people how bad it is to this logic and accuracy test, and they say, well, we know the results are right. You know, I'll walk in to a county and I'll say, hi, my name's John Brakey, and I'm here because I want to help people vote, because there's so much cynicism going in our country that people aren't voting. I come in with a different angle. And I say to them, how do you verify your election results? Well, Mr. Brakey, that's really easy. We do a logic and accuracy test before and after the election. And I have to typically, and then they look at me and they go, are you a conspiracy theorist? No, I'm a conspiracy factualist. And I want to tell you some facts. I want you to tell you that in this country, Volkswagen sold 580,000 diesel cars in the United States. And I want you to know they passed emissions maybe 2 million times over that 10-year frame. And they never got caught because the machine knew it was being tested. How did it know? Because the big reason they knew, the machine knew, is that they built sensors onto the back wheels. So when it's there and the wheels are turning and spinning, and the computer said, hey, this is a test because my back wheels aren't going anywhere. So what did it do? It turned on the pollution controls and it changed its timing, is what they did. You can go online and you can look at 37 huge parking lots in this country that have 380,000 diesels. They've been penalized by the feds $2.8 billion, okay? And the total cost of the buyback was $25 billion. A little bit of news has gotten out on this, but it's really a good way to tell people, hey, you can't trust this stuff. You gotta be able to go ahead and prevent it. How bad is the damage that these things have done? Well, my God, 72,000 people in Europe are dying prematurely because it just wasn't Volkswagen who was doing this. After they started, by the way, it made them the largest car company in the world with this car. They sold like 11.5 million of these diesels, okay? And then, believe it or not, General Motors is building in Europe. They were cheating too on their diesels, okay? They all were. And now people are paying the penalty. Wouldn't it be awful if presidents were elected this way? That's my concern. Or even senators, or even the people who make decisions on funding and the decisions that are made in this country. So that right there is just a pretty incredible. And I also, when I go into an election department, you know, I say to them, I'm here because I want to help more people vote. Because if not voting in this country was a presidential candidate in 2016, they won by a landslide. My God, 107 million people who could have voted didn't. They're not carrying those statistics. They're telling you, yeah, we had a turnout of 72%. Well, there's a lot of people in this country that believe this. And I refer to these voters as Mark Twain voters, okay? And 100 years ago, Mark Twain said, if voting made a difference, they wouldn't let us do it. And a lot of people do believe that. I have people I work with, they say, John, what are you doing? You're wasting your time. One of my consultants I work with, husband, refuses to vote. There are other people who come up with, voting has become an act of endorsing your own systematic oppression and perpetuates the illusion that we live in a functioning democracy. Wow, that hit me pretty hard. I think it's true.
I agree.
And we got to take it back. That's what we're here for. How do we be proactive? How do we go ahead and do something very special, like make the black box into a transparent box? Other countries have. The Netherlands, just all they had to do was watch what we do, and they said, whoa, those Americans are insane. And they got rid of their systems. A lot of countries are. And it's going to take educating people to know. But getting back to my friend Buckminster Fuller, what he said was a gift. To change something, build a new model. And we found a way to make that model work for us. And you know, I want you to know, me and Bill and Chris Sauter and these other people I work with, we're really bad people. We'll take you to court and we'll ask the judge, Your Honor, can you order them to follow the law? They cannot destroy public records. My God. Let's take a look at this next image right here. Let's talk about how this system really works. What you're looking at here is two ballots. One is the original ballot and one is a copy. But when a digital machine and that ballot goes in there, it doesn't count the ballot. It counts the picture that it made, and it's a public record, okay? I'm running around the country is defending these images and saying, I'm sorry, you can't destroy that. If it's generated in the chain of custody, it must be preserved. And that's the fight. And the law states that you must preserve this for 22 months. You can't destroy them. But I'll tell you why they're destroying. Bill handled it really quick. He said they're protecting the right to cheat now or in some future election. They do not want the public to really know how elections could be counted. We know that these images, I should be able to file a records request, and we have. And what we're learning and what we're getting is a way to go ahead and change the system. We at Audit USA are pioneering an achievable method of public oversight of elections to deter election fraud and ensure transparency and accuracy in vote counts. How are we doing it? We're taking them to court if we have to. Geez, look at the team they have and their track record in other states, and I'm going to go into that. But what you're looking at right now is these are states that have digital images, okay? And there's more and coming online. That's the future. The old system went extinct. Thank God. It was awful. That was a black box. It left no evidence behind how it worked. This one leaves evidence and says, hey, file a records request. And by the way, we discovered that if you get 3 records, you own the whole thing. But first off, we didn't know that until I went to Florida the first time in September of last year. But we were getting something out of Pima County. And because Bill won a lawsuit in 2007, when Bill talked about that case, there was 4 lawsuits. 3 was to collect all the evidence. The 4th lawsuit was, okay, now we want to prove to our county and our state that election fraud is real. That's where the problem came in. They wouldn't let us put that evidence on. And we spent 9 years in that case going, we went to the Supreme Court once, and then again, and then they rigged it because of a judge who had resigned. They got another guy who wanted to be a judge, and he said, okay, you file a court of the brief that causes a conflict of interest, they'll bump you from District 2 Appeals Court to District 1. All a game, all a manipulation, okay? Anyway, what you're looking at on the screen right now, this is what they call an LVR. Now you've seen a ballot image, and you'll see a little more how it works. We want to show you how we can do these audits. And this one right here was the first one we ever got out of Pima County, and I sued Pima County with Bill and another lawyer we brought in, because Bill was in a very important case, because he does a lot of civil rights cases, with these Mexicans being murdered on the border. Oh, yeah, he picked up a rock and I shot him, and these kind of crazy things that happen. Bill's always been on the front. And like I said, I'm very grateful for him for all the years he pulled me in and taught me how to be an activist, after a real activist that he's been all his life. But getting back to this, if you take a look on column A, this is a cast vote record, and that's the number, and there should be a C behind there. We did that, and then there's the precinct number, and you can see all those precinct numbers are all mixed up, but don't worry, I got it in Excel. That's the way they gave it to me. I can sort it. How do you want to look at it? It's incredible. Then you got the ballot style, because there's different styles, and then you got the U.S. Senate race. Now I could take all of this and say, okay, just like blind D, and all I want to do is look at the Democrats who won, because it was a primary. You can sort anything and add it up. By the way, this spreadsheet stops at HH, because there's 4 ballots in each precinct. You got a green, you got a libertarian ballot, you could have a Democrat and Republican, so you have 4 ballot styles. And it all fills out. Now, I mention this because I used to work in the Diebold old system of Microsoft Access. And that thing was a joke. It really was. I mean, I probably ruined my kidneys, because you get on a trail and I'm a pit bull and you hang on. Oh, I want to take a break here. I want to keep on this thing. But anyway, when I got this, they told us it was specially made. And I go, oh, gee, I wish this thing was made all over the United States. Because, when you file a records request, you can only get what is there. You can't say, hey, Joe, can you make me this? It doesn't work that way. So anyway, we went in to do a program, because we were very interested in Broward County, Tim Canova, what the whole thing happened there. And we wound up, and it was getting the LVR. I couldn't believe it. Oh my God. If I get the ballot image, if I get the cast vote record, and I get the LVR, the black box is adios. It's a transparent box. Now I just want to say one thing. That's good. We got a box of transparent, what goes in and goes out. This doesn't cure the problem. There's ballot harvesting going on, there's ballot stuffing, but boy, it's nice to have one that goes on our side for a while, okay? That we can focus on these other problems, the voter database and the problems that can happen on that right there. And, on that, and so basically going to the next slide, is that understanding the ballot images and related documents. This is online, you can find this, and you can go ahead and play with this, and you can see how it works. This explains there's 3 types of records obtained. That's what we need, those 3 records. They're public records. And if we get those, then we're in a situation that, well, first off, there we go, I just wanted to show this. How ES&S does it, that is ballot number 483I. I stands for image. 483C is the cast vote record. That then is loaded into that LVR. And I'm going to go ahead and show you one right now. This is one we have online. And you can see 483I, 483C, precinct number 12. Rick Scott, oh, what a great guy he is, In fact, we saw him steal the election through Broward County because they rigged the ballot design. The consultant who did this, who works in other states, he was $450,000. We find that a lot of people who are doing these riggings are consultants, and they're hidden in the system. We found one in Arizona. We look all over the place for these guys and find out who they are. Usually they're tied up with the person who's printing the ballots. But anyway, that was aside, because there's so many things that we've learned, that we've committed some documents that you can find online. You can hear about what happened in all these other states we've been in, because we've been in quite a few. Anyway, now if you take a look, and let's say I'm going to pull up, oops, wrong way, sorry. Now, you're looking at 3 records. The image, the cast vote record, the list of vote records. And if you take a look, Rick Scott did get that vote, okay? It was a Republican primary, okay? And if you look at the other ones, then you look at the cast vote record, and then you follow the spreadsheet across, you're going to see that those were actually votes. And there's a number of different ways that a group of people can get together and be able to take these spreadsheets. We have a system out of Wisconsin that if you had what I call a ballot party, if you got the images, you get them to per precinct, you load 25 at a time, the program will focus on a race. There's 4 people, 2 people have clickers, 4 people have clickers. Let's say you 2 are counting for Ronald Reagan and Lori's counting for Mao Zedong or whatever, whatever it is, these 2 ladies. And all of a sudden you do 25, and then you look at each other and say, how many did you count? Oh, you got 10? Oh, good. How did you 10? Okay, you did what, 12? Okay. Next 25. You can go through very quickly and run a count, okay? We're also trying to get people to work with us in building a computer program that can count it to on the precinct level. You fill out an app, that's hopeful, but that's down the line or whatever. What I'm saying is, my God, these things could be put online by a precinct like they're talking about doing in San Francisco. They're already doing it in Wisconsin. In other states, you have to request these things. And that's what we're trying to do, is to put a program together to get into these states more. We're trying to put a 14-state plan together and hire people put in these states to go out there and advocate. Because I'll say this right now, there's nobody really doing it. There's a lot of people sitting in the bleachers and they're saying things, but they're not on the front line. We got to get on the front lines and do what we did in North Carolina. We won the vote in North Carolina. Why? Because we were there. We showed up. We educated. The chair, he was a dummy, a Democrat. And he was his 2nd time on the board. And he said, well, we have been using barcodes for a long time. What? Where? No, look at the marks around the ballot. Those are barcodes. That's what ES&S told me. I said, excuse me, fella. Those are tiny marks for alignment. They don't have any message in them, okay? And he was just being given bull. And that's what happens. The only people who are teaching these people are the people who are stealing. The fox is in the hen house. He's telling them what to think. We got to stop it, because the reality is transparency is the biggest part of the solution. Transparency in government is often credited with generating government accountability. Whoa, that's something interesting. Transparency often allows citizens of a democracy through elections to control their government by reducing government corruption and bribery and other malfeasance. You know how? We fire them. That's what we do on election day, and we need to do more of that. But we got to bring people back into the fold. When you have a country that 44% of the people are not voting, and they tell you it's more, it's a bunch of bull. Look at the real statistics. And we got to prove to those people our elections are real, because they're not going to vote. If I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I wouldn't be voting. I'd be with my other friends that don't vote, okay? And so basically, what we're finding is, as Dr. Tom Ryan would say, in summary, deleting the ballot image significantly undermines the integrity of the election system that derives all its tabulation data from those images. Wow. And you know, I realized it really hard when a brave judge in Pima County, when he said to Pima County, you know, I'm not computer literate. We got this on film. But I got a question to ask of Pima County. If you take voted ballots and you were to photocopy those voted ballots and you use the photocopies to count, what makes you think you can destroy them? You can't. It's in the chain of custody. If you mail in a ballot, you got coffee stains on it, okay? What are they gonna do? They have to assemble two people. They have to open up a ledger. They're gonna call that ballot a spoiled ballot. And then they're gonna dupe and make a new ballot. And that spoiled ballot is ballot 101 now. And the new ballot is 101 duped. And they're married together, because somebody might say in a close election, hey, I want to look at this one. They have the right to go back and look. Basically, we stand on strong law to be able to do this, okay? And so I'm going to keep speeding up a little bit here because I know I'm taking too much time. Fraction magic. What did I learn about fraction magic? Fraction magic can change the vote tallies on the fly if they have a cellular motive, because it's a fractional vote and it'll make everything add up perfectly. The man who found it changed his whole community when Bloomberg News came in and they ran out the old regime. And now their city hall looks like the people that served them. It was a very heavily black community. Of course, black people would love to vote for white prosecutors, especially when you have Judge Joe Brown running, the famous TV judge who did the Martin Luther King trial. He couldn't even win in his own community because they rigged it. After it was exposed, it changed it. Not a lot of noise about it, but we know in the back of the room, we're part of it, that we made a difference. And that's what we really have to do, is make that difference. And to make that difference, you have to have good lawyers. Bill is Arizona. This man you're looking at the screen is Chris Sauter. Chris has become a very personal friend. He was sent to Arizona by Bernie Sanders because of the election. They called up Bill Risner, Democrat Party. Hey, we need the best guy in the state, Bill. Will you show up and meet with this guy? And Bill says, you know, if you want the best guy who really knows this stuff that I've worked with for 15 years, you want John Brakey. I spent 5 days with him. He couldn't get Bernie to sue the whole state, but I did. I'm proud of that lawsuit. It almost killed me, okay? But we went at him ruthlessly, and we proved how they suppressed 150,000 votes. It was nice to see them all sweated out on those benches. No, I didn't win, but we did win. We got national news, and we exposed. We proved that the voter database was hacked. Before even people knew about anything happening in the voter database, and I'm not up here saying that Russians did anything. I'm up here saying that there was an injection attack. And it was that people went to vote and they found out that they were agreeing. Like, for example, in California, Bev Harris's own son-in-law, who was a Democrat, went in and he was told he was a Green. He had to vote a provisional. You know, I can tell you stories about California. I'm out of time to be able to do that. I want to move on. But that definitely was what I call a stack, a strip, and a flip. And they only steal where they have impunity. And I know that if we train people to look at election systems, I guarantee you I can show you where they're going to steal, because they left the barn door open. Because elections are about procedures. And some procedures they do really good, and some procedures are left the barn door open, like Georgia, okay? I'm into Georgia because he took down Merle King, the man who ran the system, who rigged the whole system. They sent him to Arizona to go ahead and talk about, my God, if these people get those databases, they know how things are working, and there could be mayhem and chaos. My God, that was what we called the trial, mayhem and chaos. Me and Jim Mark used to fight. You know what we used to fight about? Who was the mayhem and who was the chaos? Well, he got the mayhem because he was a gun nut, okay? So I let it go. I was the chaos, okay? But it was a tremendous learning experience, and I was very glad I could pay Merle King back, because I sent my fellow election people in Georgia the deposition, because back there he played a dummy. I don't know any of this, but they were programming the whole state is what they were doing, okay? I would say one thing about my friend Chris, he's well connected. All he does is elections. He actually, pardon me, wrote the book on elections when it comes to recounts. He's the #1 election attorney in the country. When he first met me, he was very skeptical. It took a long while to convince him how the problem was, because he was always looking from the top down, where people like me and Bob and Bill and others who work out there, we look from the bottom up. My God, we see some big assholes screwing us up there all the time, you know? Really do, from the only point we look at, and be able to do it. So basically, what we believe is politics is a game of fear. Those who do not have the ability to frighten power elites do not succeed. The platitude about justice and equality and democracy are just that. They are platitudes. Only when the ruling elites become worried about survival do they react. Appealing to the better nature of the powerful is useless. They don't have one. I think Chris Hedges is right. I really admire his writings and what he's saying. And I know that we can go in there like pit bulls. We can smile. We can play that civility card. I play it really well. You know, if you get cross with me, you know what I tell you? Hey, we're going to be really good friends. I had to do that in Orange County. That guy was telling me why he doesn't like ballot images, but he's saving the write-ins because it's convenient. Well, I'm sorry, you don't get a chance to pick and choose. And if you don't do this, I'll have to file what we call a writ of mandamus. And basically, in state court, we typically file a writ of mandamus, and hey, I learned it from him. That's how we were doing it in Arizona. You know, if that word there is shall, you got a good shot at getting them, okay? Which is a judicial remedy in the form of an order from a court to any government subordinate court or public authority which that the body is obligated under law to obey as a public duty. For example, stop illegally destroying ballot images which are public records that could prove an election results are real or not. Hey, we can win if we can get in. Sometimes they'll try booting you on technicalities like you didn't dot the I's, cross the T's. You don't give up. You go do it again. That's what a pit bull does. Digs in. You know you're right. And I'll say this, I'm very grateful to another person in this country named Brene Brown, who taught me that vulnerability is courage. We all need to be courageous, and that's what I'm asking of all of you and the people who are listening to this, because we do got an aggressive plan. I just want to quickly go through this before I end. Alabama, wow, nothing like going to watch a Roy Moore election, what we went through there. You know, this will be online, I got a report that goes into it. And then Ohio, working with Bob, what we did there, we were able to preserve. We got to go back into Ohio, do more work. You know, we're looking to work with Bob very closely. He has a newspaper. He also has 2 radio stations. That's going to be our probably center hub, would be out of Ohio, then Tucson, and then of course Susan Pinchon, who's a movie Hacking Democracy. She is a Mainer like me, and that means we're both maniacs. And we're pit bulls with smiles, and I love her very much for what we do together. And we've been, Virginia, we didn't have to sue, we threatened them, we almost went to court, and they caved in and gave in. Maryland, oh my God, Steve's gonna tell you about Maryland and the possibilities of great things happening there that we can do. Florida, well, that's a hell of a place, it really is. And good things are happening there. And Steve's also gonna talk about what he was doing, because you know, sometimes you need somebody who's gonna push things and somebody who's gonna go ahead and then follow through it another way. North Carolina, well, that's an ongoing story. All I know is ask your North Carolina State Board of Elections, how much do you expect taxpayers to spend to make our elections less secure? Because these yokos, what they want to do, you know, when I was there, I was running around, we had this big convention, you know, and I was going up to the vendors and everybody says, hey, I want to sell you my ballot device, marking device. It's a pin, okay? And I'll just flip to the next slide here so you can get a better appreciating of it. And some vendors charge up to $35 for one of these. Hey, we'll give it to you free really, but it's 8 cents is what our cost is. Because that's what they want to do. They want to spend money to have a machine mark a ballot that's very easy to counterfeit. And by the way, you notice the barcode on the top of that? Anybody here reads barcode? How about QR codes? Secret ones, you know, because we're not going to give you what the formula is. That's what's going on. A lot of that's happening. We have to fight it. But these things, you know, I just think this, and I just want to read this one thing. You know, these ballot marking devices, it's like buying a chainsaw to cut your apple pie. It doesn't work as well as a knife, and it's completely a waste of money. We, the people, are smarter than that, and if we are properly informed, Dr. Spearman, my new brother from a different mother, president of the NAACP, is that, again, I've learned to unrig a system. You first have to unrig yourself. That's our contact information, okay? And using ballot image technology to its fullest capacity is going to be able, well, let's put it this way, a new model is born, and we can make that model work for us. And we're going to be out there working it. I'll be back in North Carolina, Michigan, that's another state that we're getting ready to go into, Pennsylvania. It's nice to find other kindred spirits that know that they want a future for their children and grandchildren. I've just had, the last 2 years, the honor of my newest grandson being named after me. And I look at him and I say, my God, what's life going to be for him at 65? We have to act. And that's what I'm asking people to do, is to help us make elections transparent, trackable, and publicly verified. And I hope that everybody who hears my voice, please get a hold of me. You can, our site is auditusa.org and Audit Elections USA. We're not that hard. My name is John Brakey, and I'm proud to be an election scrutineer, and I want you to be an election scrutineer with me. And there is actual word. You can Google that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And who's going to hear next?
I think we should have
A break? Or what?
I'm thinking you brought forth a lot of material.
I certainly did.
And I'm
Quick,
wondering
too.
if
Thinking I
people
talk
have
fast.
some questions. In 2004.
We got Steve. He's going to really
All
blow
right.
you away with his. I've
All
already read
right,
it.
here we go.
Lots to live up to here. Okay.
Do you have a PowerPoint?
Yeah, he
That'll
does.
come later.
And put it later, but he's going to,
All
yeah.
right.
He's got a set where he can play real quick.
So let me just.
And the 2 videos up at the very top I got for you, too.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, you need to go to the
okay.
slideshow and
Yeah,
play your
Yeah. We'll do that shortly. Okay. So I'm going to try to be aware of not having too much information because there's a lot that's been presented here. So let me lay out what I'm going to try to do here, and I'll try to cut it back a little bit. So John asked me to step back and lay out the landscape, or what are ballot images, and who uses them and why, and who doesn't like them and why. Compare them to the other big trend that's come on in audits and vote verification, and basically just show you. So we're not talking about concepts, but you can see what we're talking about, the possibilities and some of the soft spots. So who am I? I'm a journalist. I covered election democracies for national publications for more than 2 decades. I covered money and politics for NPR until they said there wasn't a beat worth covering outside of Washington. That was 1999. In 2004, I was the executive producer of an Air America radio show, trying to figure out what happened in Ohio, and I found Bob. And we raised a bunch of money, and on the air, no online, and then, and so here we are, 15 years later. So, what is a ballot is now being redefined. We've got to really step back and understand this for a second. It's not necessarily just a piece of paper. Some people think it is. Some people think it's a digital image. Some people think it's a piece of paper that's marked by a pen that's handheld. Some people think it's a piece of paper that has a printout on it. It could be a text print. It could be a barcode. All of this is in play right now. And where this really matters is at the finish line. Because between Election Day and the time votes are certified, there are a couple phases that happen. And these are not well understood. They vary state to state. There's not a lot of transparency. There's a stage called the canvass where they're supposed to reconcile the votes. There's the stage where there might be recounts or challenges. And some states want to have audits in there, which can be a digression, and the lawyers can lawyer up and run out the clock. Anyway, so what it comes down to is a simple question. What evidence confirms the election results or the vote counts? And that goes right back to the ballot that's being used, right back. So what's happening so I cover this stuff because I think this is interesting and I think it has real ramifications. And for most of my time covering elections, I have not covered the finish line. I've covered old school voter suppression because it's more tangible, and I'm not a computer guy, and I'm not a programmer like Jim at the end there. But I've known after 15 years that we are on a real cusp across the country, just like in California, like you were mentioning. We're buying new voting systems, and systems, they're not one computer. It's registration, it's tabulation, it's voter contact, it's the whole thing. And these systems are going to last, typically, they last 10 or 15 years before money comes around to get the next ones. And so what I want to talk about here is that the technology, in the latest round of technology, it's not what was bought after Florida. Some of it has similar elements, there's some new stuff, but I want to show you what are the ballot image portion of this, because it represents to me, and this is where I get a little editorial, I think the best instance to try to have an evidence trail. John went down to Miami-Dade, and saw these people acting like lunatics outside, and I wrote about it because it was, it's easy copy, outside the Miami-Dade County Supervisor of Elections office last November. If they had used images in 15 minutes, they could have figured out that there were really 20,000 undervotes or no votes on that poorly designed one page on one side of a multi-card ballot in that US Senate race. Now, if the lawyers wanted to fight about that, you'd be dealing with evidence, not this conspiracy theory garbage. So, anyway, so here's what I want to do. I went down to Florida last November to try to cover what I thought was going to be tough finish lines in Florida and Georgia. And do people here know who Ian Sancho is?
Yes.
Okay, so Ian Sancho was the supervisor of elections in Leon County, he just retired, Florida. And he was put in charge of the 2000 recount by the Florida Supreme Court before the US Supreme Court shut it down as the technical advisor. So after that, he kind of got a bug in his head that we have to design the best possible voting systems. And so I went down to see what he developed. And they use something that is not certified by the state of Florida. It goes way beyond what is legal. In fact, it might even be illegal, but they do it anyway. And what they do, and I'm going to describe what it is. It's actually, and then I'm going to show you so you can see it. What they do is this. They use paper ballots that are marked by hand, and they run them through two scanners. The first scanners are on election night. The second scanners, after they maintain their ballot inventory, are unattached, and then they use software that can, and I will show you what the software is, because you'll see that they can compare the results, and they can dig in, and they can create a library that's a digital analysis backed up by paper that you can pull. And there you can trace down and fight about who really won these elections. So, I have these remarks, but I'm going to try to really go through it. So the first thing is this: we're talking about stages of equipment here. So I'm going to show you the first 45 seconds of a sales video from a new vendor, and what they're doing, and what you're going to see is you're going to see if you just this is not what they're talking about. You'll see it what comes up on the screen besides all the buzzwords. That you're going to be looking at a computer screen, like I'm looking at this, and you'll see software tabs, and then you'll see the paper ballots that are marked by hand going through a high-speed scanner, and at 45 seconds I will press stop, and you'll see what John put up there, which is a digital image of a ballot. Now, that's what most places use to count. But the process doesn't have to stop there. But this is a feature that's being built into most of these new machines and systems that are being put out there. So instead of me talking about it, so I'm just going to, for 45 seconds, I'm going to ask everyone to sort of like
Make it large.
And then we'll stop. And so we just stop. This is a system that's certified by North Carolina. That's where I grabbed it.
Hi, today we're here to talk about VERITY Central, which is the next generation of Hart Intercivic's high-speed digital scanning technology. As part of the VERITY family, everything about our high-speed scanning solution has been designed around
Paper
three
comes
core
out.
values:
Ballots are coming out.
usability, adaptability, and
And it's
transparency.
off the shelf.
That means that Verity Central was designed to have a modern, fresh, and intuitive interface that almost anybody can use
Your software
comfortably
tabs.
with minimal training. Usability also means that our system is designed to process all your ballots
And that's
without
it.
tabulating them.
Right there,
That
stop,
needs
right there. Okay, so what just, before they moved on, you saw, which what John picked up before, which is a digital image of one side of a ballot card. And so they analyzed that. Okay, let me just go here. So, okay, so when John has filed lawsuits to preserve those images, but guess what? And Tim Konovic in Florida did not know this. There's more than one set of images that you can go for. And let me, and because in Broward County, Florida, like Leon County, they do something different. They take all of the paper ballots and they run them through a second system. Now this second system, it's called dual verification by the technical people, was actually suggested by National Institutes of Standards and Technology in 2005 and 2006 as the best way to deal with, to back up the best paper and digital analytics. And guess what? The voting machine industry lobbied and got it pulled out, pulled away. So around here, people, Lori has worked with this fellow Larry Moore, who created this company called Clear Audit. They first developed it in Humboldt County. The system is just so simple. You have an underlying paper record. You don't hack paper. You have two sets of scans, and you have good analytics, and you build a library of the paper so you can find it if you want to fight about it. So Larry Moore built this company called Clear Ballot. And what they do is they use off-the-shelf, and I saw this. I'm going to show you a video in a second, 3.5 minutes, of how they use it. And so for example, what you saw there with a full-screen ballot is as far as most of these places go. And you get what John showed next, which was that kind of spreadsheety looking thing, which is called the cast vote record, which is like all like the codes of like, these are the races and these are, it's very opaque and dense, right? It is not user-friendly. Larry Moore created an interface that attaches the digital images of every vote in everything that's scanned. And you can zoom in and zoom out to figure out is something being read or not read correctly or not. So why am I talking about this? And why I'm going to show you this? Because this is the potential that is out there right now with the technology that is currently exists and is being sold. What they do on this is not done widely. It's maybe done in a couple dozen counties across the country. So this is a 3.5 minute video where they're going to show you how they use digital ballot images from that second scan to figure out who won and who didn't win a school board race separated by 6 votes. So I think this is really fascinating because when Bob and I were we're in Ohio in 2004, and Bob was filing lawsuits for recounts for the Greens, and John Boniface was there doing it for the Greens and Libertarians. We never even got anywhere close to looking at stuff like this. I mean, so this is where this is the arc. So let's take a look at that. Let me see if I can get out of this. Let's see. Okay, and yep, and okay. So I'm gonna just go here.
Big screen.
Oh,
Go big.
yeah, okay. So
And
here
then
we
go
go.
to slideshow.
Okay, wait a second, and I'll go back.
There we go.
For this demonstration, we'll look at the Harrison School District Director race.
Okay, this is it.
Remember, there are 151,000 ballots in this election, so in a manual recount, the first step would be to manually find the 8,060 ballots, commingled with all 151,000 ballots, which are spread out over 732 ballot boxes. Now let's see how you would resolve a close race with Clear Ballot. We'll click on the contest, and since this is a vote for 3 contest, we can immediately see that the 3rd and 4th place candidates have a 6-vote difference. Let's start by looking at Stephen Siebert's votes. By clicking on his votes, we're able to see the vote visualization. Here we're looking for any votes that were counted for Siebert that could be considered a hesitation mark. By hovering over each voted oval, we immediately see the contest zone, allowing us to see if the marks are consistent. Each oval also links to its corresponding ballot, allowing election officials to review the entire ballot. We'll also look at overvotes and undervotes that could show voter intent and should be considered votes. Here you'll see there's a light mark that was missed, and if we click on it, we'll see clear voter intent for Siebert. We can also check the ballot provenance, which tells us how the ballot was adjudicated. That tells us the other two candidates were counted, but because of the light mark, Siebert was missed. Now that puts him in the lead by 7 votes. We can continue to scan through the rest of Siebert's undervotes, and it looks like there aren't any others that look like votes. Next, we'll look at Ryan Thompson's votes. Again, we're looking for any votes that could be considered a hesitation mark, which would put him...
You're able to go, the point is this, you're able to get into stuff at a much more granular level. Now, let me just here for a second. Okay, so what did we just see? Okay, I think this is a really smart use of analog and digital technology using the
further behind Siebert,
okay. Oh, here we go.
or overvotes
One more
or undervotes that could have been missed by the
Okay, let's just stop this. This is
where and could be considered votes. Now we know there would need to be 7 of them for the race to be considered a tie. This looks like it could be a check mark, but it's actually just a voter's message. We can conclude after examining nearly 4,300 undervotes for Thompson. There were none that could reasonably be challenged as having outside the oval or lightly marked voter intent. This recount was also done manually over the course of 3 weeks at a great expense to the county. A manual recount can be avoided entirely when you have the modern tools available to present all evidence of voter intent quickly and concisely. We look forward to showing you more about our software.
okay, now if you want to do a manual count and you want to examine things in person, which I think can be a very good idea, the order that these ballots are scanned comes out and they're put in storage boxes that way. And they're scanned, every scan is tied to each machine in a precinct. It's that granular. It's not a whole precinct, it's machines. So you know what? When we fight about the paper, you know exactly where to find it. And so what I'm saying here is, what did we see? I think this is the best use of smart analog and smart digital technology based on what is being put into these systems where they're pulling from off-the-shelf components. And this is, so the fight here, or the challenge, is to get this stuff used so that people themselves can see and be part of this, so they're not told what to believe. So, again, you have hand-marked paper ballots, a record that can't be hacked. You have 2 independent scans using different software tools to check the results against each other. You can drill down, and if you need to, you have a searchable library of the paper, not a haystack or unmanageable pile to retrieve the ballot. Now, who doesn't like this? There are people who don't like this, including some of our friends in the progressive activist community. And let me just, without spending too much time on this, the reason they don't like it is because it involves software. And software cannot be trusted. And Jim Sofer, who I've talked about, we've had very heated and polite discussions about this. Jim is not in favor of some of these. And I understand why, because but we have to then take a look at the claim that ballot images can be hacked or swapped by hackers. Well, let's think about this now. No system is perfect, but to try to swap in images at scale is a very hard thing to do, especially in today's cybersecurity environment. And if you want to know how hard it is, and I'm not even sure I should say this, Alex Halderman, who is often cited as being an expert in hacking, one of his students was caught hacking West Virginia where they had a smartphone voting pilot last November, and it launched an FBI investigation. So you know what? It's not as easy as these folks think. And now let me say, that paper is not so perfect either. Because take a look at North Carolina, the 9th district, where people basically, snared, all those absentee ballots and filled it out. So we got to be realistic about this, in terms of nothing's perfect, but what scales and what are the costs and the benefits and how hard can it really be? So when when I think about, so the folks who don't like, ballot images are pushing, and this came out of Ohio, post-Ohio 2004, are pushing a different audit process. And they have been very successful getting this written into laws in lots of states. And quite frankly, I think it has uses, but it is, here's what it is. You can reach your own judgments. It's called a risk limiting audit, which is a wonderful thing. A risk limiting audit doesn't want you to use any software. They want you to basically collect all the paper, which has ballot custody potential problems, and randomly draw them and see if your results match what the machine, the first tabulation gives you. And depending on how close to the race, you have to keep doing these draws to get basically a 95% confidence threshold. Here's the thing. Do we want to estimate the results of elections, or do we want to have an accounting process? And personally, and this is where I really part with these folks, and these folks, this is verified voting, and this is Common Cause, and this is the Braun Center. And they have lobbied hard on this, and they've gotten this methodology put into state law in audits that are supposed to occur in that narrow window post-election day and pre-certification. And if you took that school board election, it could not have a risk-limiting audit. You would have a full hand count. And then where does that leave you? And if you start a process in between election night and certification that you can't finish and the stakes are high, like, do I need to give an example? Florida's 3 simultaneous recounts last November, where Palm Beach County, because they had Sequoia machines that could only do 1 race at a time, they overheated and burned up, and then it reverted to the election night totals. Yeah. You know that. So the thing is this: you have this possibility of, the question is, how good is good enough? How good is good enough? Do you want to have an estimated, confidence mark? Do you want to have something that's more evidence-based and a fuller accounting process? To me, I obviously side with the fuller accounting process. So, by the way, only one state tries to do these image-based audits. And I will show you quickly a PowerPoint that they presented, because they examined the plus and minuses of doing these image-based audits and the statistical risk limiting audits. It's the state of Maryland. And they're not invited to any of these conferences by Verified Voting or any of the academics, which is another thing. But it's just... And Verified Voting's lobbyist defeated a bill that would have allowed those kinds of ballot images to be used in recounts in Florida in 2020. The closest we would have come this spring to any swing state having a better recount process, defeated by Verified Voting's lobbyists and working with the House Republicans there, who don't want to have people having a closer look. I mean, you talk about strange bedfellows. It's and by the way, it had the support of the State Supervisor of Associations, Professional Association, which took 6 years to get, and they stopped it. So, so the stakes here really are real. So let me just show you this PowerPoint, because very, very quickly, because what it has in it is it shows you what they discovered about bad scanning technology. So remember I said, there's that initial tabulation scan on election night, and people just stopped right there. The state of Maryland, they forced ES&S, by threatening to sue, but they didn't, to give them their decrypted ballot images so they could send them to Clear Ballot and have them analyze them. Now, doing a second scan independently would have been better, but sometimes we have to take what we can get. By the way, they also forced ES&S to decrypt some of their systems that print the barcodes on them, because you have the barcodes on top and then you have names down below to see if they matched. And what they found was that the printing of the barcodes was sloppier and more error-prone than the actual text. So let's just, but that's not in here. But let's just escape. I'm just gonna go through this PowerPoint thing very, very quickly, because basically it makes these points. And so this is a presentation put together by the Deputy Director of Elections in the state of Maryland that she tried to show her colleagues at the National Association of Secretaries of State and state election directors.
Linda Lamont or something
Yeah,
else?
yeah, this is, she works for Linda Lamont. I mean, it's astounding to me that, Linda Lamont, who was the state election director in a state that went early in on DREs and basically has done a complete 180.
That's true.
And so I don't know if let's see if this goes, is this full screen? So let's,
One more, right there.
okay, so they got, in 2016, they have a paper-based system, which is what we talked about. And they also, and you guys will see enough, okay? So let's just go through this. So they took a look at different kinds, the pros and cons of doing these different kinds of audits, okay? The risk limiting audits, they said you need a statistician, the math is hard, these fixed percentage audits, which is, you grab a certain number and you look at it, you use a 10-sided dice to select a precinct. And, let me see if this works here. Okay, okay, so I'm not gonna waste you guys' time with this. So, and then doing the digital image audit. So what did Labe learn? 3 audit methods to verify the accuracy of voting systems. What did they learn? Ballot level audits using RLA, risk limiting audits. They're difficult to estimate the budget and staff size. You need a statistician. They're hard to explain. A close margin of victory only means a complete manual retabulation or recount. And then there's some human error in there because you're managing all this paper. Okay, this fixed percentage audit is much the same. This independent one, obviously, they chose it. And they said it retabulates 100%, so it's not an estimate. It maximizes use of technology, requires very little resources. It can this is the most important. It can be completed prior to certification. This is okay, and then and the audit results and images are available for public review. So they went with clear ballot. Okay, so now let's look at this. Now this is where things get really interesting. Remember, we started this by looking at that first, precinct or vote center tabulator that was doing the first initial scan. They looked at the images. Guess what they found? They found that there were some scanner errors that were screwing up the counts. Now, that's not such a surprise considering nothing is perfect, but look at it. So what they found here was on this second box on the way in, a fold in the paper was counted as a vote.
Wow.
Because the scanner picked it up. Now, to me, this is pretty cool. I mean, consider what some of us have not seen, any kind of, recounting or anything. Well, let's look at another one. Here, they let us see if the full ballot, you can pull back and see the folds clearly, why it came through. Because it was right in the middle. That's what it was, so it was picked up. Okay, here we have scratches from the scanner's lens. Now, why would a scratch be on the scanner's lens? Maybe a piece of felt from the end of a pen would be sticking on a piece of paper that goes through and then gets stuck to the glass. Okay, and here, it caused an overvote, which means more than one vote is recorded and therefore it disqualifies you for that contest. Okay, so now this thing on the bottom here is, this little thing over here is that spreadsheet thing is that cast vote record. It's very, very opaque. But the thing is, what you can do here is you can pair up a full ballot or a part of a ballot with that bigger chart and start figuring out where things are counted right or wrong. Okay? And here, this had this thing they call double poll. What does that mean? It means that 2 pieces of paper went through at the same time and counted at once. Okay, so, this is cool stuff. Okay, here's another one. Multiple feed ballots show different contests, than what we expected to see. Again, okay, and then what kind of questions can this answer? So they said, why would a large number of voters show up and vote for more than one candidate for president? Well, sometimes they do. And you could take a look and see. And you've got that grid thing on the left that pulls up the image on the right. And if you don't want to fight over the digital images, you have them in a library, you can pull the paper. And I mean, come on, you've got so much more educated and intelligent, public exercise. Why would a large number show up and not vote? So you can check it out and see undervotes. Why would voters decide to cast blank ballots? You could see if they were blank. And then you could find other stuff, and this is important too, but this gets a little more weedy. You could find poll worker error. Like they didn't pull off the tab at the bottom. So you could figure out where you gotta, like, you know, buck up the process a little bit. You know, okay, now this is interesting. Identifying equipment issues. Okay, so here's the barcode ballots, the ballot marking device. Remember I said at the beginning, we're redefining what it is to have like a ballot or record. That's not an ink mark on a piece of paper. That is a computer that is basically adjusting what it thinks is your vote and printing it. And in this case, in sloppy or blurry barcodes, which they found, by the way, were not as precise as the actual names, the text. And some of these are these other printing errors and other ways. But so here's the thing, and this I really love this last thing. This is how you would think people, I don't know, of a certain age would know how to fill out an oval. So anyway, well, so let's just stop here. So the thing is this. What are we talking about? We're talking about the technology is changing. It has different capacities. There is a smart use of paper and a smart use of digital analytics. And then there's the whole battle over, how are we going to get access to using, or the public's going to get access to using or doing any of this? And I'll leave it at that.